Tony Halloween. I am Tony Halloween, and on this channel we talk about all things Halloween, but today we're making a Beetlejuice tombstone. For the Beetlejuice tombstone, I'm going to be using the scrap styrofoam. You know the joke about the dad who doesn't throw anything away because one day he might need it? That would be me, and that would be this. I have several pieces of this. This is 4x4, and I got it from a door company. They use this for their pallets. And I got quite a few of them. And then I've got these two pieces here that are 2 foot wide each, and then they're just under 6 feet long. So this is going to be absolutely perfect for building the Beetlejuice tombstone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 of these at the bottom to make it 8 inches wide, and then this will be on top. Then I'm going to take one of these 4x4s, kind of like that, one on either side, and then like a 2 foot roughly piece at the middle, and that will close in the space where it says "Here lies Beetlejuice," and I'll be able to fit that with some lighting, and that will light up the "Here lies Beetlejuice." And then for the top, I'm going to carve it out, and I haven't quite decided how I'm going to do the gargoyles at the top, but I've got a couple of ideas. We'll get into that. Alright, since this 4x4 board is 4 feet long, we're going to want this crease to go right in the middle. Right there. And we're going to want the tombstone to come in probably about 2 inches on either side. And right here, which will mark the outside of where these go. So all right, and then we're gonna mark there, and we're gonna mark there, and we're going to mark the 4 inches. So that'll tell me where the tombstone will start. Now we're going to mark the 3 feet where the box is going to go for the lighting. Now for this part where the bottom, we're looking for a very slight angle, nothing too drastic. I think that's pretty close, maybe a little less. Yeah, that's probably good. And then I'm going to mark that. Up to the point roughly of where we want that 3 feet mark. Now the other side is a little bit more sloped than the one side, so I think that's probably pretty close to where I want it. Remember, as I always say, the name of the game is not perfection here. Things can always be adjusted, and in the end, imperfection is beautiful. As long as we get more or less what we're going for, it's going to work out. Alright, now the peak of the tombstone is actually just a little bit off center. So let's make, this would be the center, let's make the peak right about there. So essentially we end up with something like this. Now I've got these indents carved in. This is where the hands and the tail are going to be dropping down in, but I'll probably not cut those out. I'll probably cut straight across and then kind of carve those out as I figure out where the hands are actually going to be. I drew them in just because I'm stupid. Now for the gargoyle, I'm thinking about using this bat. He's kind of broken, but I think this is going to be a decent excuse for a gargoyle. We'll get some small skeletons and maybe hot glue them or wire them together to turn this bat into a gargoyle. And then we'll just do some small skeletons on the sides. I'm not even sure if I'm going to try to adjust the heads and all that too much. It's going to be far back in the yard, and you're not necessarily going to see it up close. So we'll see how far I actually go with trying to make it as close to the real thing as possible. Also, after looking at this, I think I'm going to have to reduce the slope on this side, bring it up a little bit straighter, and give this a little more body. There, I think that'll work a little better. Perfect. All right, so here's the rough shape of it, more or less. So I'm starting to work on the lettering, doing this by hand. Gonna have to adjust that eye a little bit, I think, but for the most part, it's working out okay. And there it is.
Yes, that's it.
I am going to adjust. You can see up here, I just kind of made a mark where I want to start the actual letter. Just moved it over a little bit. And that's more or less where it's going to be. Once again, this is going to be back quite a bit. It doesn't need to be perfect. And it's also going to be lit up. So I think it's going to work out pretty nice. I'm excited. To carve out the letters, I think, and I'm going to use these too. I'll go into this toolbox. Some grommets. Probably use those for some of the shaping, but I might use this. This would be the most ideal. But it's not quite big enough. So that's what I need. This piece will come off and this will go on, and then I can use this to carve out the letters. So while the heat iron is heating up, I'm going to try to clean up these letters just a little bit. This one's to go there, and then come off that way a little more. And press the original, and close enough. All right, the heating iron is starting to smoke, and it's just about ready. Okay, so I have put this up on a stool, Put the ladder behind it. Now it's up here where I can actually work on it and not have to bend over and whine about how my back hurts like an old man. I'm also listening to one of my favorite audiobooks. This is Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Thus the worthy pedagogue got on tolerably enough, and was thought, by all who understood nothing of the labour of headwork, to have a wonderfully easy life of it. Another of his sources of fearful pleasure was to pass long winter evenings with the old Dutch wives, as they sat spinning by the fire, with a row of apples roasting and spluttering along the hearth, and listen to their marvellous tales of ghosts and goblins, and haunted fields, and haunted brooks, and haunted bridges, and haunted houses, and particularly of the headless horseman, or galloping Hessian of the Hollow, as they sometimes called him. He would delight them equally by his anecdotes of witchcraft, and of the direful omens and portentous sights and sounds in the air, which prevailed in the earlier times of Connecticut, and would frighten them woefully with speculations upon comets and shooting stars, and with the alarming fact that the world did absolutely turn around, and that they were half the time topsy-turvy. But if there was a pleasure in all this, while snugly cuddling in the chimney corner of a chamber that was all of a ruddy glow from the crackling wood fire, and where...
Alright, so this is the one side, where we have like the spot where the E is gone, and the holes in the B. There's going to be red tape running across the back, and when I put the light in there, the red tape will glow red. So I'm just going to take the holes and put them in on the tape, and that should work pretty good. I think it's looking all right.
Spite of the devil and all his works, if his path had not been crossed by a being that causes more perplexity to mortal man than ghosts, goblins, and the whole race of witches put together, and that was a woman. Among the musical disciples who assembled one evening in each week to receive his instructions in psalmody was Katrina van Tassel, the daughter and only child of a substantial Dutch farmer. She was a blooming lass of fresh 18, plump as a partridge, ripe and melting and rosy-cheeked as one of her father's peaches, and universally famed not merely for her beauty, but her vast expectations.
Oh, yeah!
She was withal a little of a coquette, as might be perceived even in her dress, which was a mixture of ancient and modern fashions, as most suited to set off her charms. She wore the ornaments of pure yellow gold, and withal a provokingly short petticoat to display the prettiest foot and ankle in the country around. Ichabod Crane had a soft and foolish heart toward the sex, and it is not to be wondered at that so tempting a morsel soon found favor in his eyes, more especially...
Paint is now dry, so I'm going to start working on getting these boards in the back in place. Alright, just going to add some of this insulation foam, and you got to be careful when you're working with this stuff. Wear gloves and make sure you got covering, because this gets really ugly really quick. If you're not careful with it. Put it down there, kind of spread it around a little bit, get it lined up, squared away, and then I'm going to set some weight on top of it. Until it dries. Okay, so we have all the glue on, all the insulation foam. It's kind of sitting on there. This, when I had the weight on it, it just kept sliding. So I took the weight off, and seems like it's pretty lined up. Alright, so after the initial base paint and attaching all of the various boards, this is kind of where we're at. Now, a few things that I still have to work out. I've got to figure out how to fill in this side right here without covering up the B. And then this side over here is the same. I have a couple of ideas for that. I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to choose yet, but got a couple of ideas. And then basically, I think what I might do, there's going to be a hole back here that I'm going to put a light in. Once I get this stuff worked out, I'll put a hole back here. I'll be able to run a lamp up inside there and just run it white. It'll shine through the red and it'll look great. And then I might not even need, I'm still going to need to put some kind of stabilizer on it, so I'm not quite sure exactly how I'm going to handle that yet. I might just put a hole here and then put rebar down in that. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to do it, and that'll stabilize it. But yeah, I think all in all, it's coming along pretty nice. For the sake of time, I'm not going to fool with these gargoyles too much. I've got a 3-foot skeleton, it's 35 inches, and I've taken a leg off, and I'm going to reposition the leg, and I'm going to reposition the other one. And I've got some bat wings from a bat skeleton that I'm going to attach to him. And I'm hoping that might be good enough. I'm going to touch them up with a little bit of paint, and I'm hoping that'll be good. We'll see. Yeah, I think that'll work. Almost done. I've still got to do a little bit of reinforcement on this lettering. Some of the spots where it's real thin has gotten weak, and it will be breaking through as soon as the wind hits it. I got to touch up paint, but first I'm going to drill some holes in it and just put rebar on the ground, drive the rebar down so that it's flush with the front bar there, and then I'm going to do 2 in the back, and that should hold it in place pretty well in the ground. When I get it all situated, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do dry brushing on it, and that will add a lot of the texture that I don't want to fool with putting in now. These guys, I'm a little worried about them because they're not fastened on there super well. I'm hoping that that's good enough to hold them, but if we get some really nasty weather like we're about to have tomorrow, it could create a problem. But it's not the first time I've had to go back and redo a prop, so no big deal. Where this came from. Here we have it. The cemetery is up. Beetlejuice tombstone is back there. I'm going to do some work on it now that it's in place. And I think it's going to look pretty good. This right here is a wooden tombstone that I built, as well as this one over here and that one there. You can pull back, you might be able to see all of them at once. So the two on the outside here and here, and then the one in the center, one row back, are all wooden tombstones, and they will hold the lights. I'm going to have these two on the outside be blue, and the one in the center on the tombstone will be green. And hopefully that'll create a nice setup. Still got to get the mausoleum, that'll go back there, and then get the dry brushing done. Just got to get the fence zip tied together. Everything's in with rebar through PVC, and it will hold pretty well as long as we don't get another Helene coming through. Here it is all set up. It's all dry brushed, looking much more polished, finished. It's far from a perfect piece, but it doesn't need to be, because we are a little bit distance from the sidewalk, so nobody's getting up close to look at this thing. It just needs to look like a Beetlejuice tombstone, and that's it. Now, I did go ahead and put the rebar in. That seems to hold it pretty well. There's rebar in the front and the back on both sides. Here, I'm just taking some tape to, I gotta add another piece in here to kind of close this off completely. In the back, I just cut a hole, ran a light through it. That lights up the red tape and the lettering. And that's pretty much it. This thing is ready to go. Hopefully it just doesn't get beat up in the wind before Halloween. The mausoleum is just about up. I'll show you real quick how this works. So there's this board that is great stuff. It's a mess from the hurricane, but there's this fence panel, and I just used great stuff and glued it to the styrofoam, and then there's this piece of PVC pipe that goes all the way down, and there's a piece of rebar. Just goes straight up through. This side goes down, that side goes on, top piece goes on top. I got the mausoleum situated. I've had issues with this before where it's got caught in the wind and blown that rebar right over, but this time I think it's going to be good. I've taken this piece of paneling and put a bracket on there that'll lock into the fence panel, and that'll come down to this thing, which used to be a base for the swing set. It was a massive swing set with a big playhouse on top. My woodshed back there is actually part of the top of the playhouse. So that's a big old heavy piece of wood right there, and I'm pretty sure that's going to hold this thing in place. I may come back in and put a strap down on this and just strap it to this bush to hold this side, but I'm pretty sure this is going to hold that down. Here we are with the lights. I like the way the skeletons are shadowing on the back of the house there, well, front of the house. The colors aren't quite popping the way I had hoped. I have to work on those a little bit, but all in all, I think it looks pretty darn good, and I'm pretty happy with it. All right.